Okay, so we're going to continue the study of human rights. I was wondering if anybody wants to do any kind of review of what you remember thus far. If anybody wants to volunteer. When did we do this last week? Yeah, I think we did it last week. Anybody?
Elaine, I'm so poor at this, but I remember um, that I learned something new. So it won't be a very excellent review like you're requesting, but I will
No, it's
share what
okay.
I learned new. Um, that Cyrus had, when he allowed freedom of religion, and there was one other thing. And now, again, like I told you, my brain. There was one other thing that he did that I had never learned before. Maybe you can help me.
I will. I'll let me pull the board up
Because
real
that
quick.
was really cool, to again showing us how we have narrow vision many times. And from our Adventist teaching, we tend to steer narrow and conservative still, and we only pull out certain things, and there's a whole view to perceive. And so I found that very beneficial. Anyway, go ahead, dear.
Yeah. Anybody else before I pull up this? So what Susan was talking about is the part about Cyrus, which I didn't know either. I don't know if anybody knew that. Maybe somebody did. I know I didn't. Maybe Donna's with us. I think Donna said she had read it before. Um, but when Cyrus the Great conquered Babylon, there were three things actually, because I was thinking the same thing as you. As there was two, but there was three things. He freed the slaves. They had freedom of religion, choose their own religion, and also was ending racial discrimination. So,
Hmm.
and go ahead. Were you gonna say something?
No, no, yeah. And we
Could you
never
list those three
learned
things?
that.
What's that? Somebody else said something?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut off Susan. I said, could you list those three again, please?
Yeah, he freed the slaves. He allowed for the freedom of religion to choose your own religion, and also was working on racial discrimination, that there wouldn't be any racial discrimination. So, literally, from what we are studying about human rights, he's the beginning. What we've learned so far, anyways, whether or not it goes back further, this from the article that we're reading, um, she puts it at Cyrus, the first attempt at human rights. And I don't know if it goes back further, but to be Cyrus the Great, I find, I think we talked about it last week, kind of amazing, because Cyrus the Great is the one that a lot of the evangelicals believe came from a dream, one man's dream, that Trump was their Cyrus and their savior. And because they view Cyrus apparently without realizing some of these things, which I
Yes.
think is
The only
And
interesting.
it brings new meaning to what God says about Cyrus being his anointed.
Yes, and the thing about Cyrus is that, good morning, everybody, happy Sabbath.
Good morning, happy Sabbath.
The thing about Cyrus is that he freed the slaves, he gave religious freedom, and the first human rights declaration on his cylinder that he put in literal stone, really. And um, but those rights were for everybody, not just for a section or a segment of people. They were for all people, all walks of life. And when you use Trump as the, manifestation of Cyrus, whenever Trump speaks, he's only speaking to his base. He's not speaking to all people. And that's why he can talk the way he does, because he's not speaking to all Americans. He's only speaking to a small majority of Americans and or conservatives, and sometimes, world people around the world. And that his worldview is so small that when you hear him up there speaking, you have to understand that's the extent of his worldview. He cannot see anyone else, anybody else outside of that worldview that he has, that really small vision, the small binoculars that he looks through. He's not talking to everybody. He's only talking to his base. And Cyrus was total opposite of that, because he gave freedom to all people wherever he went. Even Isaiah 45, he conquered and doors open. It was so easy. And I imagine he thought, wow, this is easy. But then God says in Isaiah 45, I was the one that went before you and opened the doors and allowed, I was the one. And that's what humbled Cyrus when he found out later on, when Jeremiah showed him the prophecies of Isaiah. So, I mean, it's just when you really know what really went on, it's really hard, for someone that was a disillusioned fireman that thought he had a vision from God. And I mean, honestly, that's where you get your prophecy from. Don't people question where these people, I don't understand. Well, actually I do, but because the worldview is so small that's all they can see. And that's why I'm trying to learn more about, because of that video that you had recommended, long time ago. I don't know how long ago, but the white right.
Oh, yeah.
I learned so much about that documentary, and because of that documentary, and because of the journalist, I mean, she was such a good template of how we ought to see things, and not prejudge people, or and have any prejudices, and just ask real life questions, because that's what she did. She just wanted to know why these people think the way she did. And if you watch that documentary, she did 4 interviews. She interviewed 4 of the white supremacists, and these are all leaders. I think the last one was just a member, but those first 3 that she interviewed, they all left the white supremacy. I mean, on the video, it only shows one guy, but actually the 2, there was one guy, she was in the house and he was younger, and he was saying stuff like, I would never break bread with a Jew. And he was really anti-Jew and anti-Muslim. Well, later on, he got so much, this video affected everybody. And he's on a video talking about what happened to him, and how he has this whole network of friends now that are all over the world, and that he said he never knew existed. He never knew he was in this group because that's all he knew. That was his friends, and so he was going to go along with them. But when he got on this video, and then people started doing what she did, they started doing exactly what she did, his whole life view changed. And he turned around, and you see him in a church talking about, sitting down and eating with Jews, going to a synagogue. And I mean, it's just amazing, the transformation. And he said, no, my worldview was so small. And, so when Donald Trump does his rhetoric, we have to realize and see him as his very small worldview. And that's all the people he's talking to. He doesn't care about anybody else but his one base. And that will be his downfall, I believe, because he's made a lot of mistakes during this president. This election, he has made major mistakes by the person that he chose to run with him, by just not controlling his his emotions and the things that he's just being his authentic self. And that's the major mistake he's been doing. He is being his authentic self. And I think that will definitely, I mean, I think the proof will be in the, what happens. So anyway, That's my take.
Thank you for all that. I if I had to simplify all of that, it goes right along with kind of what we're going to look at with these three generations, is that really the worldview, with the study that we watched last night, number 10 from Slovakia, where you have to eradicate sin from the heart. You have these, well, there's probably a lot of different worldviews, but these two main worldviews, of self and then selfless. So selfish and selfless. And with that documentary that you mentioned, it opened their eyes to the point to where their worldview, their perspective changed and made them able to think about others, the pain that others experience, the suffering that others experience, instead of just their rights, what they have the right to.
Can I
So,
make
go ahead.
just a small comment? And it's just been something I've been thinking about, and it goes with this, but I don't know if it's correct yet or anything like that. But when you use the two selfless and selfish, I've been thinking a lot about, like, sometimes you have to think of self. And I think selfless, always, I was too conservative on that. If this is making any sense to anyone, I felt like it was selfish to not to care for myself. Um, then I was comparing that with, like, the Pharisees and Sadducees. Each were extremes on the wrong end. And Jesus was somewhere in the middle there, in the middle ground. Same as we were steered from the far right to the left, but we're not far left. And we're not all left, so to speak, right? Because we have to sift. So I'm seeing, like, I'm not there yet, but I don't know if I hope someone's following what I'm trying to say. Somewhere in this, there's some kind of balance we have to come to. If that makes sense. And I'll just leave it at that. I hope I was clear.
Yeah, I think I get what you're saying. So, and help me if I got it right. Jesus, for instance, would go away to go pray alone, rest, what have you, to be better prepared to help others and be selfless. When you're on the plane and they tell you, when the oxygen mask comes down, who do they tell you to put it on first if you have a child with you?
Right. Yourself. My first answer to that question was the child. I would see that's where my mind was. But if you can't take care of yourself,
You
how
can't
can
take
you
care of
help
others.
anyone else? Yeah.
So that's the way I have always understood it, that you do have to take care of yourself if you're going to be able to help others. Because if you're in a bad state, whether it be physically, mentally, or whatever, emotionally, then what do you have to give to others? You only have to give what you have.
Yeah, my mom used to say this all the time too, and this goes to this. Charity begins at home, because I was always giving so much that there was nothing left, right? Um, Now that's not necessarily right either, because that would be nationalist thinking if you really take that far, right? Because you're only thinking of your own home, your own family, no one else. That's how I saw what she meant. I saw it too extreme still. I still couldn't get on board with that completely, yet I saw the logic in it. So I'm just trying to I'm just trying to come to a balance with these extremes. And maybe part of it is just my experience has been extreme. I've had to experience one side and then the other throughout my life, right? And it sort of does help you when you go far on one side and then far on the other to recognize there is that balance. But finding it is not that easy.
Nationalism takes it from the individual to the corporate, is that how you refer to it? To the group. And nationalism puts its focus on this nation, well, whatever nation, you
Right,
know,
your
the
home.
nation.
That's why I said charity begins at home, right?
Right,
If you think about
right.
that, it's nationalist.
You're right. Like I didn't catch the connection. I was just going that direction, but I guess that is the connection, but I didn't make it at the time.
Okay.
So so yeah, it's that you have the individual and then you have the group. And nationalism was going to focus on it's the same thing, but they're going to focus on the home, like you said, or the nation. So yeah, I didn't even catch the two. So thank you. So we started at 539 with Cyrus. We went to 1215 in the Magna Carta and saw that that was a um
Elaine?
I
not
think
to
Phil
be.
has
Yeah,
his hand
Phil
up.
had his hand up.
Oh, go ahead, Phil. Sorry, missed it. Turned my head and missed it.
Sorry. I just wanted to make sure he's heard.
Yeah,
Thanks.
yeah, thank you. Yeah,
Mhm.
so lately I just been thinking a lot about what Elder Parminder, I mean, things that he's taught, like fast brain, fast brain, slow brain. But then what I've been really thinking about is what you see is not all there is,
Mhm.
you know. And so with Cyrus, if- until we read this human rights about Cyrus, all I knew about Cyrus was he was gonna let the Jews go free. And he was the beginning of the three decrees. Let his people go free. Right? Let God's people, the Jews, go free and build their temple and go worship. But now, you know, and so when you read that part, but that all you saw was all there is, which was just the Jews. And so taking Elder Parminder's that teaching of what you see is not all there is, and now we see this about Cyrus, how it expands to the whole world. Now, it's not just the Jewish people. It's about everybody that Cyrus conquers, everybody that Cyrus touches. It's about freedom of religion, freedom of race, um, and it's so it's just amazing how when you apply Elder Parminder's teachings, it it opens up your mind to other possibilities, and those possibilities is confirmed by such as uh, this reading. You know, what one of the things that Gina was Logina was sharing with me is that there was this um, ballerina from one of the African Sierra Leone, and I don't know if you heard of her. She was 29 years old when she suddenly died. We don't know of what, but she's Sierra Leone. She's black and she has vitiligo, which is like discoloration of skin. So she has like huge blotchiness in her dark skin. There's white, there's dark. And ever since she was 3 years old, she wanted to be a ballerina, and she became to be a ballerina. But in her childhood, she saw some traumatic things. Oh, like for example, when she was in, I guess, primary school, very young, one of her teachers who was pregnant, um, the rebels came in, and one of the rebels, her teacher, right, one of the rebels dismembered the fetus, That was in the teacher. So this is what she grew up with, and she became she became a ballerina. And he said for some reason she died, but she was a human activist. So it's things like this when I think about not all their what to me what brings my empathy and compassion towards humanity is Elder Parminder's teaching that not all that you see is not all you see is all there is. So when you think of Cyrus, when you think of this beautiful young ballerina, and you read books like My Body, uh, what's that?
Our bodies, their battlefield.
Our bodies are bad. This inhumanity. We're battling this inhumanity in us to see the humanity that's in us, and I just want to bring this out, thanking Elder Perminder for opening up our minds to other things that are the evil that's out there. Just because you don't see it, it's it's there. And one of the things is that Elder Perminder, it's not God's love, right? It's God is love. God is law. God is love. Therefore, A equals B, B equals C, therefore A equals C, right? So the law is love. And so if one of the things I kind of beginning to realize to regain my humanity is that if we're God's counterpart, which God created us to be God's counterpart, then we too have that. We are law. We are love. And I think that part of that story of breaking that love, breaking that law in the Garden of Eden, that separated humanity from God. But I think that if we're a counterpart, that we are in some sense, I don't understand it, but we are love because God is love. We are law because God is law. And so, I'm, like I said, taking that concept of not everything you see is all there is, and taking the things that Elder Perminder is teaching us, looking at humanity. It's just trying to just piece things together to make me a better human being, to have sympathy, to have empathy, to have love. So when I interact with other people, I know that what I see in front of me is not all there is. There's more. And so from that, I can gain more empathy, more compassion, no judgment. And it's just the teachings are coming together, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. It is. And you said a lot of things that tie into this as well for me. When if what you see is all there is, what does that mean for your worldview?
It's very narrow.
Yeah, very narrow. So, there's so many things that shape us throughout our lives, like you mentioned with the ballerina and the traumatic, what she saw in what happened with the teacher. There's so many things that shape us, and those things can be have a positive effect to bring good, and they can also have a negative effect to be such trauma that a person. I kind of see it as I like what Susan put in there, that good and a rough exterior, that if we're made in God's image, didn't there have to be some good in all? But you spend a lot of your life with this battle between that inside of you. I mean, I've seen that in some people who go through a lot of changes in life that, and I think about it in, when I just look in my own family and how I think I've mentioned before, my three older sisters, they were all out smoking, drinking, skipping school, doing all this stuff, and I wasn't doing any of that. And I was called a tattletale because, hey, to me, when they were doing something wrong, they needed to stop. And I never viewed it as bad that I would go and tell on them. I wasn't trying to get them in trouble. It's like, we're not supposed to do that. And so there must be something in us that good is trying to win. And I don't know if that's accurate to say, but that's how I've always kind of viewed it in my head. There's this battle, and people go through that battle, and their behavior is based on whatever inputs came into them. And those inputs can be, like I was saying with the ballerina, those inputs could be this traumatic experience that takes you to do good. And those inputs of traumatic experiences could take you to do bad. But you could have that good always trying to fight to win. And then that goes back to last night's study of the stress that we're under. You have to stress the plant in order to get it to produce fruit, to bring that out and have that victory. And but anyway, so like with what you were saying though, what you see is not all there is. And if you live in a world of what you see is all there is, then your world perspective is based on what you see. And then you're going to go on from there, and that's going to be your behavior and drive your behavior, whichever. Yeah, it'll be very closed and very narrow, I think you said. So we went to the Magna Carta 1215 and saw that, I think it was fellow Logina that brought out, it was the fight against tyrants and authoritarianism. Is that correct? Magna Carta?
Yes, against the king.
Against the king, so that they could not to try to I don't say suppress, I don't know the right word, to not have tyranny, the king over you, that the people have rights too. And then you go into 1628 in the Petition of the Right, and John Locke in 1688 to 89 was the Glorious Revolution, and this battle for human rights, as it was continuing down here developing, is what, from what we've been reading, created this revolutionary period, because people were starting to eyes were being open, perhaps because they were learning what you see, whether or not they saw it that way, but what you see is not all there is. And they were learning that they ought to have rights, and they have the right not to be trampled on, and they have the right to dignity, the right to respect. And as that started to rise, the more that would rise, the more tyranny there would be, and eventually you come to a revolution. And so then we had John Locke, who initially coined life, liberty, and property, which later goes into the Declaration of Independence by Thomas Jefferson, but written as life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But we still see here in the United States Constitution, in the Constitution, you have it addressing man. And many like to go and say, well, it means humanity. Well, if it means humanity, then why are women oppressed? Why are blacks oppressed? Why was slavery, the word not there, but why was slavery embedded in the Constitution? Because you still had this idea that one is superior over the other. And then the Bill of Rights to protect the people. And then we get to the time of the end. And then eventually to 1948 in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So we're going to look at a couple things in that page that we went to last week. I like sunlight. Sorry. Feels like it's so much better to have sunlight on us. But so we'll go back and look at that article, a couple more things to look at, not the human rights article yet, but the web page that we were at last week, if I can find that too. So give me just a second. Okay, human rights. See if we're in the right place. Oh, wait, you know what? I do want to go. We're going to bounce around, sorry. Because we are going to go to the article. And because we didn't finish this part, and I kind of want to go a little teeny bit into this area where we started, because we started looking at the three generations and we saw that they were cumulative, overlapping. I've kind of, and I think it goes on to tell you get to see when after you go through each of the three that there's a conflict between liberty, the civil and political rights, and then equality. You can see kind of this tension that goes on in there. So the three generations were cumulative, overlapping, interdependent, and interpenetrating. Liberty was the first, which we'll read, and it was civil and political rights. It was more towards freedom from. And when we look at this laissez-faire, I don't know if I'm saying that right, we're going to get a little bit more idea of what they're talking about there. And then equality, which was economic, social, and cultural rights, the right to. So you can see you'll eventually see there's this conflict in between the two and how far you want to go. But this goes to me, what I understand it is that worldview. How do you marry the two and have them come out right? If your worldview is what you see as all there is, I don't know if this is right to say, that would be the more selfish rather than broad looking at everybody. And then the fraternity, which was the solidarity or group rights. So, and I kind of marked, I think it's right to say that 1 and 2 here are the individual, based on the individual, and 3 would be based on the institution. Any comments before I read this section?
Just
We read
one
it before.
favor
Go
to ask. Would you mind reposting this document in the chat? Because not everyone has this.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. Give me a second to find it. But I had to unshare that screen to get to the, oh, good. Okay, there you go.
Thank you.
Okay, so the 3 generations, which was liberty, equality, and fraternity. And so liberty first was the civil and political rights. And I've been really thinking about when it comes to, that's kind of off topic, but because within this article previously, back, I don't know, several studies ago in part of this, where it was breaking down like the church wanted moral laws. They want to take, what's the problem when you take the Bible and you want your civil laws based on morality?
Because then you are depending on the standard of morality that whoever is in charge believes. Right?
Yeah.
And we're seeing that reading the Bible literally is like of the devil. It comes to horrible conclusions.
Phil, were you going to say something too?
Yeah, what I realized is that just strictly on the Bible, I know for me, it has made me very narrow-minded. So if that's what you're going to base your morality on, then you're very narrow-minded.
If you want to use laws to dictate morality, then it's whatever you decide morality is. However you interpret the Bible, take it literally. And so there needs to be civil laws, but I don't believe moral laws. Moral laws go into the realm of human rights. It would deny human rights. probably a lot more to that, but
Yeah, and I
uh,
was reading an article, I can't remember now what country. It went to like a world court. Oh, can't remember. But it had to do with the authoritarian in charge. And it had to do with arresting and locking up reporters, media, people in the news that were reporting facts. I wish I could think of what country. It just recently just happened. And even though they were facts, the facts did not coincide with the authoritarian narrative of how events, right? The narrative had to go along with, and that means it can be false. The narrative can be a lie, but it doesn't matter. You have gone against the standard. You have gone against whoever's in charge's view. And you can see on that, just by that example, where this could go. Whoever is in charge's view, even if it's false, and you try to go against it, you are going against the government in charge. And anyway, I thought that was really interesting. I'll have to find out where that occurred so I can back that up. But
yeah, thank you for that. So this is liberty, liberty, civil and political rights. The first generation civil and political rights derives primarily from the 17th and 18th century reformist theories noted above, such as those associated with the English, American, and French revolutions, infused with the political philosophy of liberal individualism and the related economic and social doctrine of laissez-faire. Is that how you say that? So I'm going to switch screens real quick and find that in here. I thought I had it lined up, but I don't think I do. No, I have it. Can you see it now, or do I need to change it again? Can you see laissez-faire? Laissez is how you say it. I don't know how to say it.
Yeah, laissez-faire. Yeah, I can see it.
Laissez-faire. You can see it. Okay, good. Okay. So
Is
what
there
is
a-
it?
Is there a way you can make it a little bigger though?
Yeah, sure. Better?
There we go. Thank you.
I don't think I can get rid of that ad. It wants to stay there. So I'm going to see a little X to get rid of it. Okay, so what is it? Laissez-faire is a policy of minimum governmental interference in the economic affairs of individuals and society. The doctrine of laissez-faire is that usually associated with the economists known as physiocrats who flourished in France from about 1756 to 1778. And the term laissez-faire means in French, allowed to do. What does that sound like to you? Does it sound familiar? My chat.
A libertarian?
That's what I got out of it.
Yeah, little government interference. Let me do what I want to do.
Yeah, that's what I got out of it. So liberty, you can kind of see with these three generations, how do you, I don't know how to say it. I'm going to say it my way because I don't know how to say it. How do you take these concepts and keep them in check for the benefit of all, you know? And so that's what I got out of this is that it kind of denotes or connects to, or, you know, maybe I did kind of roughly look up the physiocrats and I don't want to go any further with that, but you could look them up too as well. So
you can
let's see.
also see from that how Trump has consolidated the billionaires and the corporations, right? Many of them, because that laissez-faire also has to do with free market capitalism. your
Yes.
ability to individualism, right? Which also is libertarian, but you can see it reminds me of when Elder Tess was pointing out the far right to us and the libertarians, the men's rights activists, and right now I can't think of the third, but how in the beginning, initially, when she showed us that, we believed her. We could see parts of it, but as we dig deeper, you can really see how they gravitate together, even though they have different ideas on a lot of things.
Yeah. And liberty itself, in what we're reading, in what we've understood, liberty itself is not a bad thing, but it can get hijacked into being something that it wasn't intended to be. And it does go into
Yep.
capitalism in this.
Same as freedom.
Yeah.
Freedom can be used for good or for bad, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, depending
So,
on your definition, what it means to you. Like I
right.
could speak a sentence with freedom in it, and everybody could take different opinion of what I said because they already have a mindset of what something means, that word means to them. So it's that's why it's so difficult sometimes to use words that move people's emotions, because those words can bring up emotional sentiments to individuals, you know?
Yeah. And still going back to what Phil said, that if you live in the world of what you see is all there is, then you're going to see liberty as pertaining to you personally with disregard and disrespect of the liberty of another. It's a simple
Yeah.
way, probably a
And I
complex thing.
posted the link to, it was Hong Kong,
Yeah.
where,
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
just
I
in
saw that.
case anybody wanted to check me on what I shared.
Thank you. I saw that. Okay, so where did this come from? The term, the origin of the term laissez-faire is uncertain. It is often said that it is derived from the answer Jean-Baptiste Colbert, Controller General of Finance under King Louis XIV of France, received when he asked industrialists what the government could do to help business. And he said, leave us alone. Leave us alone. So now we'll go back to our document. Gives us a little bit, because that to me was helpful um, to understand the term, what they're saying here, and how that can be taken depending on your worldview. And you could see the connection to the libertarians there. Okay, so let's see. Infused with the philosophy of liberal individualism and related economic and social doctrine of laissez-faire, the first generation conceives of human rights more in negative terms, freedoms from, rather than positive ones, rights to. It favors the abstention over the intervention of government in the quest for human dignity. So I think what happens is they lose in the, let's see, in the abstention over the intervention of government, you have the quest for human dignity. And so from the libertarian point of view, do they recognize the dignity of humanity besides themselves?
No, generally they don't. It's freedom for, and that's why they want small government or preferably no government
Yeah,
to just leave them alone to make their money. I say, on the surface, that sounds good. Just leave me alone. Let me do what I want to do. But freedom unchecked, untethered, as we see, it's just very dangerous because
yeah,
it leads to oppression.
right.
I
And
want to share something on that. because I don't know, a while back when I was in the Bay Area, there became more and more homeless, okay? And some of them were kind of scary. Not all homeless, you can't just say all homeless are good people, okay? But many of them have been lumped into a bad basket altogether, and that's not true either. But like they would congregate in places like around businesses, and you could sort of see where when you pull up, like you didn't really want to go in that business because they would kind of harass you and stuff, some of them, especially if they were drinking. And so on one side of that view, I could understand why some businesses wanted them cleared away so that customers could go in and out. Okay. But the problem I think I was missing too is because it became an epidemic. We are now in an epidemic of this homeless, and there's so much involved in it, right? Because of housing costs, especially here in, in America. I mean, and especially where I've been around, in California, and the cost of rent is astronomical. And I don't know how they expect people to do it. And then people are in their vehicles, and where are you supposed to go where you won't get cleared away? It's a huge problem. And then right here by where I live, um, there's this creek. And so a lot of the homeless began to congregate by this creek where I hadn't seen them when I first moved here. But then I began to see them because you have to go across this bridge, right? And they were all down in there. And I wasn't viewing them the same way. I felt empathy for them, right? Terrible empathy for them because of what all is going on. But I also felt concern because they're smokers. There was trash around, and there's a lot of like tall grasses in that area that catch fire. And so I thought, oh, this is not good because you could see now dragging mattresses in. It's dirty. Um, you know, and then one day I went to cross the bridge because I was becoming concerned a fire could start. It was becoming a danger. But what do you do if the government isn't helping these people? But then I went to cross the bridge and I saw them all clearing them out. And then I was like, where are they taking them? You know? But it turned out Tuolumne County has a really good program, thank God, for the homeless. But you can see this, like the wealthy don't want to, these libertarians, they don't want to see those people, right? They don't want to see them around. Clear them away from their neighborhood, take them anyplace else. But then on the other hand, I can see where it's a problem because sanitation, uh, fires, things like that. So I think of Ellen White quote again, how, even the statesmen and people can't solve the problems that are occurring. I can't solve it, but I see it growing, and it's a problem, you know.
The problem is, the problem
Uh,
isn't,
I would like, oh, excuse me.
no, go ahead.
Okay. I'd like to make a little comment. Hope I don't get, um, I work for the sheriff's department, and don't worry, I don't go chasing people and hurting anybody. But they give us classes after classes on how to deal with the homeless, the different kind of homeless, like Susan's correct, you got different kinds. And what we ran across, we can stop and offer them help, give them a phone number, address of where to go to try to get further help if they want. And what's so shocking about it, most of them don't want any help because a large percent, that ranges anywhere from 40 to 60%, are on drugs. They don't want to be controlled by not having their drugs. And that is a big, big problem. And Susan's very correct on most of her comments she made. That's a big problem. So how do you deal with it? So we try, we offer. If no, we can't force them. But one of the biggest problems of the homeless is their drug addiction. And they don't want to be in any place where they can't have their drugs whenever they want them. And it's like, whew, what do you do? And down like up there, down here, same problem. They get in these washes, ravines, and they started numerous fires toward LA, and even got here in Riverside. And those little camps they have down underneath the thing. So, like I said, we have classes after classes after classes on how to try to deal with them, administrative classes. And it's a sad thing, but most of America's problems, as they try to blame Biden, Harris for it, financial problems are already there. $8.8 trillion worth of deficit that Trump did, and keep it quiet. But we'll pass that on to Biden's administration. But America's problem, the biggest problem is their spending problem. They never focus on what I need. It's what I want. The airports were so loaded this Memorial Day, they were scared they wouldn't be able to fly everybody. I wonder where all the money come from for poor, broke America. And we do have our poor people that'll always be with us. That's why I've always tried to help wherever I could to help them. That's what my mother was. You got to help people. We wasn't rich. We wasn't poor. We was a happy low medium, but we always was taught to help people. So as time goes on, it'll get more interesting as life goes on. I'm good.
Yeah, thank you. I think about when people say you can't solve the problem. I think about how we don't always look at the conditions. I think that was kind of mentioned, comes to the housing situation and unaffordable. The conditions that, and it's not just housing, but the conditions that people are under that cause them to go a direction that they do. And there are so many different conditions you could list. Go ahead, Phil.
Yeah, I mean, actually, the problem is solvable. I mean, it's not that hard to solve the problem, but it is. But what it is hard is to change the hearts of people who can solve the problem.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, if you think about why one of the most richest billionaire moved his operations from California to Texas. I mean, that kind of answers your question. Now, California taxes are too high. Like you really had to pay taxes. And so he moved the whole Tesla corporation to Texas, where he could pay less money. So, that's what, Jesus said, the poor you'll always have you. Jesus didn't say why you'll always have the poor with you. But Elder Prime Minister said, why we'll always have the poor with us, because there'll always be oppression.
Yes.
And that's what Elder Prime Minister said. That is exactly true. 1/3 of the housing market, 1/3 of the housing market is owned by corporations. Point something percent of the people own 40% of the world's business. So it's the hearts of people that refuses to change and see the value of all human beings. They did a calculation at one time. If the top 10%, I think they said, if the top 10% just paid 10% more, there would be no homelessness. There would be no poverty. So yeah, problem is easy to solve. Change the hearts of people, that's the difficult part.
Right, you're right, Phil. That's so true. You know, if the just imagine us pushing a wagon. Everybody's pushing that wagon, contributing to move that wagon forward. But yet the billionaires are in the wagon and they're not helping to push. That's the tax system. And whenever the billionaires or the people who are in the wagon don't have to push it, it becomes harder for those who are pushing it. It becomes more expensive because just because they don't pay the taxes doesn't mean those taxes never get paid. What it means is we now have to carry and pay those taxes, that the people who should be paying their fair share, and then the people at the lowest totem pole are the ones that pay the most taxes. It's a really backward system, and it's unjust, but as long as, we're at the point where, we're at the end stages of capitalism. In the beginning stages of capitalism, it's very good for the society, businesses, and opportunities, and just wonderful things happening, manufacturing, all that. But the end stage of capitalism is what's very dangerous, because that's what brings in fascism, because you have so many titans, business titans, that now they're not just business moguls. They now can actually dictate to government power, because with money comes power. And that's where we're at. We're having these very wealthy people, and now they're beginning to dictate policy. And yet they're not political. They're business people. And many of these business people got their wealth in corrupt ways that most people will never know. They just think, oh, these people are geniuses, and but they had to step on a lot of people to get where they're at. And this is a history that will never be told, because now history is being dictated. So it is such a dangerous place, and fascism, well, that's just look up the history of where fascism leads, and it's just awful and ugly. And eventually, only a few people rule the whole nations.
Now the question was brought up in a conversation during the week, that in regards to the taxes. Well, it was presented to me, well, the Democrat billionaires that are going to vote for Harris, they get the same break. I says, it's the mindset. They're willing to change it. If they vote for Harris, they know they have no problem paying their fair share of taxes. And the room got very quiet.
And what Phil said was absolutely correct. Even if the wealthy paid 10%, just 10%, which is just a smidgen of what most Americans pay, just 10%, if they paid that, we would solve all the problems. No, Social Security wouldn't even be an issue. You could just forget about Social Security at that point. Social Security will be sealed and done and protected. Just if these small 1% people just paid not even their fair share, just a little. Instead, these corporations and these billionaires literally pay nothing. And that is not fair. That's not right.
$3 trillion.
But you see, they run they run everything now. So I mean, it's always going to be, even media. It's going to get to a point, even mainstream media it's all run by these very wealthy, they can dictate what they want. And I mean, there are some. I'm not saying that all these wealthy people are corrupt and wicked. There are some that are good and do have a good heart. But you don't really hear about them very much. So anyway.
So I agree when it comes to a heart problem, and the heart problem is really a difficult one to change. And that's what I've been seeing if I had to summarize everything I've been putting together with human rights. We haven't gone through it all, but is that that everyone is entitled to dignity and respect, that there is a serious heart problem, and capitalism is how do I want to say that that seems to be where a lot of we all have a heart problem, but that's where when it comes to these solving these big problems, that's a huge part of what does this. And capitalism is when it comes to greed and self, and rather than looking towards others. So this liberty, it would depend on your worldview. So you can put this out there, these 3 generations out there, but it's going to depend on your worldview, how you're going to see it, and where you're going to feel attacked instead of looking beyond yourself and look to others. And when it comes to the homeless situation, it's looking at how they got there, looking at, you can't solve a problem if you don't look at how they got there. And so when you come to the place like Susan was saying, where you look at it and it becomes problematic, it's like they're not looking beyond the surface of the problems to see the cause of the problems, and you can't solve it if you don't look at the cause. So belonging to the first generation, thus are rights such as those set forth in the Articles 2 through 21 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, including freedom from gender, racial, and equivalent forms of discrimination, the right to life, liberty, and security of the person, freedom from slavery or involuntary servitude, freedom from torture and from cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment, freedom from arbitrary arrest, detention, or exile, the right to a fair and public trial, freedom from interference in privacy and correspondence, freedom of movement and residence, the right to asylum from persecution, freedom of thought, conscience, and religion, freedom of opinion and expression, freedom of peaceful assembly and association, and the right to participate in government, directly or through free elections. Also included are the right to own property and the right not to be deprived of it arbitrarily, which we went into this last time quite a bit. Rights that are fundamental to the interests that were fought during the American French Revolution to the rise of capitalism, because the rise of capitalism took us to bad places.
Yeah, and you can see, when you were reading that, it jumped out at me, the freedom from, where is it? The right to asylum from persecution. And I think back to, what's his name that went to Russia, several of them, because there was no place else to go, because America was becoming the persecuting power, right? And I think of like when America was the only place, when in Revelation, when the woman wanted to swallow up, right? And the people fled to America. Now where are they gonna go? There will be no place to go, because like Donna has even said, we're in the final stages, right, of this capitalism and where it's led. And capitalism hate feminism because they make so much money off of women who conform to the patriarchal standards. There's so much money to be made. And anyway, it's just
That's right.
interesting. Go ahead, Donna.
That's right, Susan. And the only way capitalism can be kept in check is with government regulations. Once you start deregulating, taking away checks and balances from these corporations and businesses, that's when capitalism has free reign, laissez-faire, or what was that term? Laissez-faire, do what you want. That's for people who can do what they want because they've been given the power to do that.
So, yet it would be wrong to assert that these and other first generation rights correspond completely to the idea of negative, as opposed to positive rights, freedom from, or right to. The right to security of the person, to a fair and public trial, to asylum and persecution, or to free elections, for example, manifestly cannot be assured without some affirmative government action. So there has to be some government involvement. What is constant in this first generation conception is the notion of liberty, a shield that safeguards the individual alone and in association with others against the abuse of political authority. This is the core value featured in the constitution of almost every country in the world and dominating the majority of international declarations and covenants adopted since World War II. In large measure due to the brutal denial of the fundamentals of civic belonging and democratic inclusion during the Nazi era. This is essentially Western liberal conception of human rights is sometimes romanticized as a triumph of the individualism of Hobbes and Locke over Hegel's glorification of state. And I did look at it, I don't have it fresh in my mind, a little bit of Hegel, and I think I had some of him wrong as well. But we'd want to, if anybody wants to go further to look at the difference in the two. So this would be equality, economic, social, and cultural rights. I know we need to get through this, but give me 1 second. If I find, yeah, this is back where we were at last week, where the video was. And a disclaimer. I might have said this already, I don't remember the other day, but this particular website, I was like, shoot, I didn't look up who actually is behind this website. So I don't know, you might be kind of surprised to hear that it's the Church of Scientology that's behind this website, which really, really surprised me. But
excuse me, are we looking at something?
yeah, do you not see it? Did I not share it?
I'm not seeing anything.
I found it for myself. I found it for myself.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Well,
There we go. Human
Yes.
rights defined. Thank you. I had to get it pulled up to where I could then find it and go back and share, and I just assumed I'd already done it. So, so yeah, this is back at the other website that we were looking at last week. And so what are human rights? So let's see. As a noun, human is a member of the Homo sapiens species, man, woman, child, or person. Rights as a noun, things to which you're entitled or allowed, freedoms that are guaranteed. Put it together, human rights as a noun, the rights you have simply because you are human. And then we watched the video that talked about people really can't define human rights. So human rights are based on the principle of respect for the individual. Their fundamental assumption is that each person is a moral and rational being who deserves to be treated with dignity. They are called human rights because they are universal, whereas nations or specialized groups enjoy specific rights that apply only to them. Human rights are the rights to which everyone is entitled, no matter who they are or where they live, simply because they are alive. Yet many people, when asked to name their rights, will list only freedom of speech and belief, and perhaps one or two others. There is no question these are important rights, but the full scope of human rights is very broad. They mean choice and opportunity. They mean the freedom to obtain a job, adopt a career, select a partner of one's choice, and raise children. They include the right to travel widely, and the right to work gainfully without harassment, abuse, and threat of arbitrary dismissal. They even embrace the right to leisure. So this is what went into, the Declaration of Human Rights. So we'll go out of that section and go back to our article. If anybody has any comments on it, go ahead. Thank you. That's the website you just put in there. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so equality. This would be the second generation. Remember, it's not linear. They're overlapping. And so the second generation, composed of economic, social, and cultural rights, originated primarily in the socialist tradition, which was foreshadowed among adherents of the Saint Simonian movement in the early 19th century France, and variously promoted by revolutionary struggles and welfare movements that have taken place since. So it's like liberty was a right direction to go. I'm just going to summarize my own thoughts here, and I don't know if they're right, but liberty is the right direction to go. The freedom from tyranny, but depending on your worldview, depending on your if you live in the world of what you see is all there is, and you're very narrow-minded on to the point of seeing only your own life, your own story, as opposed to the story of others, liberty can be then misused. So then comes equality for economic, social, and cultural rights. So in a large part, it is a response to the abuses of capitalist development and its underlying and essentially uncritical conception of individual liberty, which tolerated and even legitimized this exploitation of working classes and colonial peoples. Historically, economic, social, and cultural rights are a counterpoint to the first generation civil and political rights, and are conceived more in positive terms, the rights to, than in negative ones, freedoms from. It seems that they're to balance each other out.
Yeah.
Right? Is that the way?
Yeah.
Yeah, they are to balance each other out, the two.
And the one is steering more towards their direction, right? The more powerful, as power consolidates. And I was thinking about lately just the commercials everywhere, just the ads and the commercials and the drive to make us buy, constant buying, constant needs. And even if you don't need it, they make you think you need it. And it's just like everywhere, because that's what they want. Consumers. They have to have consumers to keep the engine going,
Yeah.
That's capitalism. And that they'd have to have women have babies so they have more consumers, and workers. It's just really ugly.
Yeah.
I had recently, I always avoided, I'm sorry, Elaine. I always avoided on Yahoo my mail, where they keep trying to get you to buy your email. I kept saying no, no, no. But you know what? I finally took them up on the free tryout because I was getting so much spam mail, and and just to clear away so I could get to what's important in there. You know what I mean? It was becoming a job, a task. And even I would unsubscribe, they would still send. Or out of the blue would come more that I had nothing to do with. I don't even know where it came from. And it was becoming such a beast that I thought, I'm going to try this, see if I can clear it out. And they actually offer you a way to block through it I'm not done with my my free monthly trial. But man, it cleared away all kinds of that crap. But they got me to buy something again, you know? Uh, I have done all that, Donna. I have done a subscribe. I have done spam, and it just keeps coming in by droves. I mean, it was becoming overwhelming. And if I'd miss a day, it would be just oodles and oodles. You know what I mean? And I don't know. Anyway, it's just dawned on me how it just seems like it's just coming at full speed and nonstop from every direction.
I have a strange aversion to people trying to sell me something. I will do the complete opposite. I have, if you try to sell it to me, then you can guarantee I'm never going to buy from you. I've always been that way. I don't know what it is, but when Chris was first out of high school, his first job was selling newspaper subscriptions. I might have shared some of this pieces of this, and it kind of came into a conflict because Chris was very good at selling, and I saw it as bad, and he was young and didn't understand that. And he got from selling subscriptions to he was so good at it that he then wound up with the team underneath him that he managed, and then he wound up being above a bunch of teams managing, and he would bring his teams, they'd go to various neighborhoods, and every now and then he'd hit our neighborhood and he would bring somebody he was training specifically to me because he knew I wasn't gonna buy into it. And it would literally make the person being trained would have an experience of someone that is not going to give in and buy. So, but it was he's learned along the way, grown from that and totally different. But yeah, they use that power of persuasion to convince you that you need something. It's like I've always been a no means no person. And if I say no, it means no. It doesn't mean I need you to come back and give me more information. No means no. And the more that they try to sell, then the less likely I would ever be to buy. And so, it's annoying. And especially when it comes to, I signed up for, I think we've all heard of Heather Cox Richardson.
Yes,
Yeah,
historian. She's wonderful.
yeah, I did sign up for her newsletter, and the day that I signed up for that newsletter, this FYI, um, I suddenly was getting hundreds of other um, emails from various whatever. So when you sign up for one, it goes out and you automatically get signed up for all these others. And I
I,
was,
Think that's what happened to
you
me
know,
because
yeah, I
I
think so
signed up
too.
for newsletters also from like New York Times, Washington
yeah,
Post,
Yeah,
Substack, right? And boy, all of a sudden things just snowball.
yeah, that's true, Elaine. And it starts when you subscribe to something.
yeah,
And then they sell your information to
yeah,
other people who are they buy these lists of
yes, they do.
people who like to buy things, and they sell these lists to all these businesses. And as soon as you click onto one of them, oh my goodness.
And not only that, there's an epidemic in scammers now. It's
Yeah,
epidemic
Yeah,
proportion because so many people's like even Dropbox, Dropbox that
yeah,
I tried it a few years back when I was new at sending you certain documents. Once I got my Apple, I had a different kind of computer and you couldn't open my documents, right? And I didn't know my way around and I tried the Dropbox. Well, it got hacked and a lot of things are getting hacked where they're getting your information and I was reading about that it has become just they are getting so good at knowing how to fool people. So that was another reason why I've tried the Yahoo It's $4.95 a month, but I haven't had to pay it yet. But you can block everybody and they can never send to you again. Where I have unsubscribed and sent to spam, and they still will come back and haunt me. So they got me to buy something just because they put a control on it that stops it from ever being able to bother you again. But again, they get you, right? And it's just such a nightmare because it's just such a vicious circle we're in as humans. It's like a rat race, round and round and round.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so let's continue on here. Historically, economic, social, and cultural rights are a counterpoint to the first generation, civil and political rights, and are conceived more in positive terms, rights to, than in negative ones, freedoms from. They also require more the intervention than the abstention of state for the purpose of assuring the equitable production and distribution of values or capabilities involved, illustrated of some of the rights set forth in Articles 22 to 27 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And in that link, such as social security, the right to work, and this is summary here of Articles 22 to 27, social security, the right to work and protection against unemployment, the right to rest and leisure, including periodic holidays with pay, the right to a standard of living adequate for the health and well-being of self and family, the right to education, and the right to the protection of one's scientific, literary, or artistic production. I forgot what I was going to say a minute ago, so we'll leave that off. In the link, because Christine posted the link for the website that we just looked at. If you go through all that, then it's going to, and you can get the Declaration of Human Rights any Google search. But that particular website, I was kind of starting to go through them because it gives some, kind of details behind each one. So I found kind of helpful. Okay, so, but in the same way that not all the rights embraced by the first generation, civil and political, can be designated as negative rights, so not all the rights embraced by the second generation, economic, social, and cultural rights, can be labeled as positive rights. For example, the right to free choice of employment, the right to form and to join trade unions, and the right to participate freely in the cultural life of the community, Articles 23 to 27, do not inherently require affirmative state action to ensure their enjoyment. Nevertheless, most of the second generation rights do necessitate state intervention because they subsume demands more for material than for intangible goods, according to some criterion of distributive justice. Okay, so second generation rights are fundamentally claims to social equality, however, in part because of the comparatively late arrival of socialist, communist, and compatible third world influence in international affairs, but more recently because of the ascendancy of laissez-faire capitalism and the globalization of neoliberal free market economics since the end of the Cold War. The internationalization of these equality rights has been relatively slow in coming and is unlikely to truly come of age anytime soon. On the other hand, as social inequities created by unregulated national and transnational capitalism become more and more evident over time and are not directly accounted for by explanations based on gender or race, it is probable that the demand for second generation rights will grow and mature, and in some instances even lead to violence. Thought about that in looking in terms of where we're at today, that where we're seeing violence and worse and worse and worse. There was an article that I read in The Guardian. No, I think it was NBC News. And it was talking about Texas. I don't know if anybody else saw it. It was I saw it yesterday. I don't know if it was brand new, but I think it was pretty close. With Texas, because Texas was ahead of Roe v. Wade in doing away with abortion rights. And it was talking about how the death of pregnant women and those that perhaps had just given birth had greatly increased in Texas in compared to the rest of the nation. Something like 56% increase in death of pregnant women, whereas the nation was around 11% when it came to the death of women. So trying to think of why I went there. Um, but the just abortion rights alone, taking away and denying abortion rights, and what that the change that has made within the nation. Oh, I know why I started to say it, because it said that it was commenting that this was a harbinger. We've heard that word harbinger to what's to come. And we can see that when you have Texas doing one thing and then you have Roe v. Wade, and then the other states are like dominoes going with them, and that you can see it as a harbinger, and those death rates because of the denial of abortion. So as we try to picture what things look like on the other side of the Sunday law waymark, and then also violence. But I was looking at this more of, so what's going to happen to women as this continues?
Also wondering about free trade with other countries, and if we go nationalist, like Musk moving his business to Texas, and we know Texas is red, so Texas would be nationalist. And usually they wanted their capitalism wants its products produced as cheaply as possible, so China was always the go-to. And so I was kind of wondering what would happen on all that. You know what I mean? Like if you want to keep it in America, buy USA. Um, anyway, just a thought that occurred to me that
You see these things at all different levels.
pardon me?
You see these things at all different levels. You
Yeah,
see it.
yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know if levels isn't the right, there's a more accurate word. Scale? Scale?
Yeah,
Is that how you would see it?
scale is good.
So you have the individual, and then you take the same problem um,
Globally.
to globally, yeah. And you could take it scale from what goes on in the cities, the counties, the states, the United States, and globally, and you can see the great controversy on scale by scale at each level.
100%. Yep.
Yeah. So that was equality, and we're gonna have to wrap it up pretty soon. Um, but I thought this was interesting, telling you that how this would eventually lead to violence. So you can see this conflict between liberty and equality. And as Fell stated really early on, we're kind of emphasizing is what you see is not all there is. And if you live in that life that what you see is all there is, then your worldview, your perspective is going to be completely different. And then key also is what's in the heart. And so you take these two concepts, liberty and these two generations, liberty and equality, and depending on your heart and your worldview, this makes a difference to how human rights would if they were to ever happen. And what we're seeing is it's not in the future happening in the future. And we can see it, how damaged we are now. Going back to 2014 and all that went on in 2014, then the 2016 election, and then we come along and get the midnight cry message, and we can see just how far it's all deteriorated since then. And the hearts are maturing. Go ahead, Phil.
So you were just mentioning about the abortion law of Texas and how that predated Roe v. Wade, their anti-abortion laws. And Georgia actually has a law that they have to study women. So their law is that they have to study maternal mortality review. So every pregnancy death that they have to review. And this is in Georgia. It's quite actually interesting because it's a law. I think it came into effect, I think 2019. But after the review, I think the review comes out, the result of the review comes out every 2 years. And so what they've been realizing is that women who cannot receive abortion, because the whole article was about this, the exception clause. You can't have abortion unless you're raped or incest, or I think there's another, or health of the mother, I think it is. That's a sham. That's a lie. And because what just that state, what it's showing is every year. For example, I think if I'm not mistaken, I think that wasn't that 10-year-old girl who was raped from Georgia, I think. I'm not sure. But she
Had to go
couldn't get an
to
abortion.
Ohio for abortion. Atlanta?
Yeah, she had to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
I can't remember where her original state was. But these clauses, what they're saying, it's a sham because she was raped, 10 years old, and she still couldn't get an abortion in her state. And so she had to go somewhere else. So Georgia, what they've been looking at is like, so every 2 years, the result comes out. And since these draconian laws in Georgia, that more numbers of women have been dying because they cannot get the proper care that they needed, even when they're raped or incest or anything like, or mother's health. And we heard stories, right? We heard stories where some of these women had to wait until they were in the brink of death, and then they were saved at the last minute because of surgical intervention. But what we don't hear is that women actually dying, they died because their care came too late. And this is what Georgia is actually putting out, that women who have actually died, not saved at the last minute, but died because they couldn't get the proper medical care.
I'll post that article when we go on break. I'll get it because I know I sent it to Chris and Jesse, and I'll post it in here for anybody that wants to read it. But it is talking about the deaths as well as you're talking about. So let's close off to this particular study just with, I started to read this. It was either last night. I think it was last night. Kind of wanting to look at the French Revolution in terms of how this whole the fight for human rights is what brought on the revolutionary period. But I really had a lot of trouble. I had to kind of put it away because there was too many things that I felt in conflict with what we now know. But this particular section right here, right at the beginning, I found helpful. At last, the evil triumphed, going into the French Revolution. This chapter has to be read with what we know now in the battle for human rights and what equality is, and that's the mind of God. So, at last, the evil triumphed, and the truth of heaven was thrust out. This is the condemnation, that light has come into the world, and men, or humanity, love darkness rather than light. The nation was left to reap the results of the course which she had chosen. The restraint of God's Spirit was removed from all people that had despised the gift of their grace. Evil was permitted to come to maturity, and all the world saw the fruit of willful rejection of the light. So you have this movement And you can see the light that has come into this movement, and we're given the view of what's going on in the world and watching it. And the word maturity is what stuck out to me, because when you look, what does maturity mean to you? What goes through your mind when you hear the word maturity? Ripe. Yeah, it's exactly what I was thinking. The agricultural model. They're maturing. And then during the Sunday law history, all the world will see the fruit in its maturity. So it kind of struck me as that as well. So, but I had a lot of trouble because there were that chapter really has to be read with through using the methodology and in light of what we know today. So we'll go ahead and close in prayer, and then we do have Kathy at 11, Kathy McGraw at 11. So is there, Susan, would you like to close us in prayer?
Okay, thank you. Oh, Majesty of heaven, our wonderful God, thank you for all this light and knowledge that you've bestowed upon us, Lord. We all realize we've been damaged by this life. You can't get through this life without being damaged, Lord. But we're so grateful that you're offering this restoration to each of us. And we're so thankful for your grace and glory, Lord, and how you've been so loving and kind, and how you've steered us along. And help us, Lord, be that loving and kind and graceful and merciful to others. Help us, Lord, see the good, if we can, in every situation, Lord. Because every trial we go through, even the ones that seem like they make no sense, Lord, down the road, they prove to be such a blessing. And we begin to understand why we've had to suffer different things. And Lord, I'd very much like to lift up Donna. And I'd like to lift up Ava and Manuel. The grieving process can take a long time. But I've seen so much growth recently in dear Ava. I've had interactions with Ava more than Manuel, so I hope Manuel's doing well also. And we're so blessed by all who join in this group, Lord. We have so much diversity in this group, yet we also have so much similarity among us. And thank you for the lesson that Elaine provided for us today, Lord. So full of gems and truths, and each of us found something relatable which we could share to add more. Thank you for these experiences you're giving us, Lord. Thank you for this Sabbath, the beautiful rays of sunshine you're giving us, but yet cooler. It's a blessing. And may you continue to bless us, Lord, this day. And Kathy's presentation, and she joins in, and all who join. And thank you again for being our loving, wonderful God who's teaching us all things. Thank you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you.